Hello Year 7 and welcome to the first lesson of this week, in which we're going to be looking about what the real world thought about Soviet Russia. We're going to learn about someone called Gareth Jones, who reported real life, talked to real people in Russia and broke down the barriers of propaganda to get to the truth. In fact, he uncovered the Holodomor in 1932 to 1933 Ukraine. So there are two groups on Animal Farm. There's the pigs who run the farm, and then there's the working animals, and we know that the pigs are having a better time of it. There's apples, there's education, there's ribbons on your tails for the pigs. For the working animals, there's hardship and death, and as we saw with Boxer, it was a very grim ending. And in the same way, there were two very clear groups in Russia. There's the Communist Party workers, who've gained newfound status, and they enjoy that and the luxuries that come with it, including imported wine, fancy cars, and plush offices and apartments. Whereas the average factory or farm worker in Russia is still basically living in the same way that they did under the Tsar all those years ago. In fact, some of them have been born since the revolution, and they don't know what they're missing out on because all they've known is hardship. So this very brave man goes into Russia and starts talking to real people and see if he can get past the facade. Because when you go to Russia in the 1930s, not now obviously, they would give guided tours to tourists with these really competent, very charming guides who would maintain this facade of Soviet Russia as being a worker's paradise, says Gareth. And these people convince the tourists that everything's wonderful, and they leave thinking, wow, what a success. Whereas Gareth starts talking to people outside of the tour guide's remit and hearing the truth. So they're seeing these lovely, happy workers, nice rounded cheeks, dandling a baby. Whereas he realised that wasn't the case. How are they managing it? Well, Gareth has worked out that there's only 10% of people who are actually actively making decisions. They're the rulers, and the rest, the 90%, are non-active. They're the ruled. There's a really clear hierarchy in Russia. Most of the active ones, the leaders, are actually really young, and in fact, many of them who are now 20 were only 7 when the revolution broke out and have no concept of life in anywhere else in the world, so they can't comment on how much better or worse it is. But Gareth, coming from the West, can see that people are really struggling with poverty. And one of the ways in which the government in Russia tried to convince people to carry on was that it would sort of show all the other naysaying countries what they can really do with these 5-year plans. Let us reply to the furious arming of the capitalists by carrying out the 5 years plan in 4 years. A bit like the animals try and finish the windmill in spite of all the other humans saying that it can't be done, and to try and get it done even quicker. And you can see this is a real poster displaying the 5-year plan that comes crushing the Western capitalists, showing them who's boss, Soviet might. And in some sense that was obviously encouraging, but it can't take away from the fact that people are hungry. This young lady has very knobbly knees. That's because she's starving. This photo was taken in the Ukraine in 1933, and you can see she's also not got enough clothing. Russia remains a poor and discontented country, reported Jones. One employee said he just can't get enough food, and he can't get enough money to live on either. He's only working 8 hours a day, but many people are working 10 or 12, which sounds a lot like Boxer, our poor horse who died in the last chapter. And of course he represents the Russian worker, just like this man who I think actually is working in metalwork. And they really hate the fact that the communists get to live in luxury. The average worker is aware that not everyone is living like them. This is a picture of an apartment from the 1930s belonging to somebody in the Politburo. And as you can see, it's decorated with expensive modern paintings, it's painted, tiled, lots of velvet. It's luxurious. And the people in Russia were aware that those in charge were getting a better deal, which wasn't their vision of communism. So take a minute now to summarise what you've learned, and this will be really helpful when you read the next chapter. Well done, Year 7.